one of the images of the last couple of weeks that I remember, and it's a good memory. But that of the protests going on in London, and one of the protesters carrying a counter-protester who seems to have had a health issue, but carrying him on his shoulders. And when someone asked the protester, "Why did you do that?" He was yelling at you about 5 minutes before. He said, "Because if I didn't do that, something bad would have happened." And that really strikes me. That sense of compassion. Reminds me of the story of Babe Ruth. And because I'm a Yankee fan, just Babe Ruth is way up there on a pedestal for me, and I suspect many others. But Babe Ruth hit 714 home runs in his lifetime career as a major league ball player. But one of the sad things about Babe Ruth was towards the end of his career, he should have retired much earlier. His health, his agility, everything was rapidly deteriorating, and he had to continue playing, one for his sense of pride, he wanted to be a manager, but the other reason, he really needed the money. And so he was playing with the Boston Braves, and they're playing the Cincinnati Reds in Cincinnati. And Babe was just not having a good ball game. In fact, it was a disaster. He couldn't throw. He made several errors. If you look at the box score, you'll see that in one inning alone, Cincinnati scored 5 runs. And Babe Ruth probably was the cause of those 5 runs because of the errors that he had made. And so during the game, he came up to bat, and because he'd lost his speed, he struck out. And Babe, when he would strike out, just was not a very glorious thing to look at. And because he was playing in Cincinnati, as he was walking back to the dugout after striking out, and it was the 3rd out of the inning, his head was down and he was very dejected. And I suspect the crowd saw a victim, and they started booing. And it is said by one of the sports writers of there, the booing was so loud that you could hear it 4 blocks away from the ball stadium. I mean, that's loud booing. And it was facetious, it was mean. And as Babe continued his walk in the midst of the boos, this little boy jumped over the railing, ran out to Babe Ruth, and got down and wrapped his arms around Babe's legs, crying. And Babe reached down, picked up the little boy, gave him a big hug, set him back on his feet, and then patted him on the head. What the crowd experienced at that time, I believe, were 2 heroes. One, the Babe, who cared for the little boy. 2, that little lad who cared for a human being. And needless to say, that loud booing and all of a sudden was transformed into a loud hush, because the crowd had witnessed something in the middle of them. It had changed their hearts. Compassion does that. Compassion changes our hearts. Not only the heart of the person giving compassion, but the person receiving it. The psalmist says, "It is good for all." The Lord is good for all, to all. And his compassion is over all that he has made. What a beautiful imagery. And so going back to the protest, someone a long time ago in the 60s said that the train for brotherly love rides on the track of caring and compassion. God bless.